Yes, we are. Smash, bang, wallop, wishy washy, bish bash bosh. Yes, you're back here. Chris the chick, chatting up the chick. We got Martin Pugh. We're smashing it. We're kicking it. We're wicking it. We're what? Smash, bang, wallop. What are we doing? No, it's gone silent. Right.
What are we doing? Oh, I haven't yarn.
Right, on this week's show, let's do a quick recap. Last week we was chatting about the Final Destination, and we discovered that we were both talking about the same thing, but we just kind of came in a different angle to it, and that was...
I think, yeah. I don't want to rehash old ground, Chris, but I think you're right, man. I think many people have the same end game, but hey, the path between A and B might be different.
Yes. You can talk to a lot of religious people about that, but I won't get into that. I've just had a massive conversation with someone online that went on for ages, but it was good fun. It's good to just have a few random yarns with people that you don't really agree with. But yes, this week we was going to open up the sacred circle of conversation, or in this case, the sacred line between you and I. In the chat we was talking briefly about titles and hierarchy, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but the question that was posed was, is this something that we actually need in this world, or is it just a lot of pomp and prejudice against us pawns of the system?
Pomp and prejudice. Wow. First of all, I love the alliteration. Second of all, I love the words themselves. Pomp and prejudice. Man, great words.
The two P's. Can't miss them. So what is it about titles? Is it something... Let's start off with, are you a fan of titles? Are you a fan of Mr. and Mrs., Lords and Viscounts, Queens and Kings?
Well, your comments earlier, are they just pomp and prejudice? I definitely think there are an element of that to titles, but there's probably a practicality to some that help you navigate society and navigate life. Like, if what's an example? If I sign my name Master Martin, you can probably make an assumption there that I'm a young male person. So there are some elements of titles that are helpful, I think, in help people to navigate society and or understanding possibly who someone identifies as, or how someone identifies, or about someone's identity. But on the other end of the spectrum, are there titles that are pomp or overly sort of dramatized? Of course there are. And is there a purpose to that? Well, I don't know. I think it depends on who you ask. If you are someone that carries that title, I'm sure they'll be like, actually, this title is really important. But
you got me thinking. Just to put some context to what you're saying, it's like I've known people in the past who have completed a PhD, or they're a master in their craft, and so they feel like they have to be not so much welcomed as, but they almost addressed as a doctor or an MD, or when you see people who get certain qualifications and they'll have their name and then they'll have all these different acronyms afterwards to show what they've done. And from my perspective, it could be egotistic, I don't know, or are they genuinely trying to say to the layman, this is who I am and this is my skill set? But would the layman even know what an MD is, or
Bingo. No, I don't think so. I think, like, take a lawyer, Chris Chick, pretend you're a lawyer, Chris Chick, LLB.
What do you mean, pretend?
LLB, what does that mean to the majority of people? LLB might mean
long length.
I was going to say little league baseball, but long limbed will do.
Long limbed.
LLB, what does that mean? Chris Chick, LLB. Oh, he's a baseballer. Oh, great.
Yeah. Sounds like my rap name.
It's probably actually better if they wrote Chris Chick, legal, local
Legal length.
Bengal tiger. You know, I don't know. Like, why use an acronym? Why not just write the full thing out? You know, I mean, I know this conversation doesn't mean to be about acronyms, but I think acronyms are similar to titles in that you can use acronyms like, oh, grab the echo from the backer and put it in the whacker, you know, under the guise of, you know, you don't know what I'm talking about, therefore I hold all this power of intrinsic acronym knowledge, you know, without me sharing it. You don't know what a backer or whacker is.
It sounds like it's got something to do with the Jamaican green, but
just examples of yeah, I don't know,
AK-47, Purple Haze. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
wacky tacky backy.
So I mean, you know, acronyms, titles.
All right, let's work from top down.
Yeah.
Now, during a time within the medieval world, and when the world was very what's the word I'm looking for? Tribalistic. Like, you know, you had to have your kings, your queens, your head tribesmen, different sections of life and society that dictated that people needed to be arranged in a way for the benefit of the rest of the tribe, so to speak. So that's the only reason why I could think why kings and queens were put in there. Not only that, but also for the land grab and being able to say, do as I say. Why? Because I'm the king. Like, off with his head type thing. Like, is there a place in modern 21st century living for those kind of titles?
Well, I think even if we were to say that there wasn't a place, I don't think that would actually ever be a reality. Because I think human nature, human tendency is to structure, is to organize, you know. I think human nature is to hierarchize or create a hierarchy within a social group or community.
Yeah, and I suppose from, even if you do get rid of the moniker of king or queen, it's going to be replaced with something else, whether it's a president or a prime minister. All right, they might come under the adage of a so-called democracy, but yet a democracy is only one step away from mob rule, the way we do democracy anyway. So what's the difference between a mob rule and one single person saying you must do this? Why? Because I say so.
Well, I guess in a mob rule, everyone gets the chance to have an opinion if they're not swept up in the sort of you know, in the mob mentality, you know. Whereas with democracy or representative democracy, as we have in New Zealand, where people elect a representative to therefore represent that group of people at a table full of other elected representatives. I guess that's the difference, you know. So, is there a title by which it makes them easy to identify? Probably, you know, like MP, Minister of Parliament. If you didn't know, you know, I guess if it was a big community, let's say there was 3,000 people in your wee community in your town, and there was a person named Jamie.
I can't believe it took you that long just to
Jamie.
come up with my name.
Yes, Jamie, who was elected to represent that community. You know, there might be a few Jamies. Not everyone might know a Jamie, you know. So you can't just say, "I'll go down the road with your problem and talk to Jamie." But if you go and say, "Oh, I'll go and see the Minister of Parliament," his name's Jamie. You know, there's only going to be one Jamie that's a Jamie and a Minister of Parliament.
Yeah, and I suppose that is the good thing about having people in positions of power and titles. It kind of stops that ability or the notion of confusion when it comes to where do you go with your problem, or how do you exercise your right to do this, that, or the other. If you haven't got someone to answer that question, because you wouldn't just go to your neighbor and say, hey, look, thinking of creating a mass protest against white betas, right? Because that's what we do. Like you would have to go to the right people in the right place to give you the right information to be able to do it in a way where you're not going to get yourself sliced and diced by those crazy white. No, I'm not so crazy. They're nice people. White betas are nice, all right? Do you hear me? White betas.
I guess the election process for that is simple, but and there's a process by which someone is elected into a position like that. But a lot of other titles don't have an election process as such. They're it's more of a selection rather than an election.
And there's always an issue with that, because I've always thought if you have a group of people who are so disenfranchised by a way something is run, that even if you do have a fair election, well, in reality, the only people who are actually involved are those who are part of the franchise. And you see that all the time, especially in like real bipolar places like America. Like they have such a small turnout. Like the only reason they had a large kind of turnout last election was because of Donald Trump, and people like, man, we need to really step up our game.
Well, we even had some out here in New Zealand as well with the end of life choice bill and the cannabis referendum bill. So those two things really actually drove a much higher voter turnout and a much different demographic too, which is really good, because I guess they were issues that people felt engaged with.
Well, I suppose it's different as well, because we're in a different era as well. We're in an era of not high stakes, but kind of higher understanding. And because of social media, so much information is out there that people cannot but be involved in decision making, because it's hard to not even hear about it. Like I remember growing up in London, late 90s, just turned 18, had the right to vote, had no idea, like zero, because there was zero kind of advertising out there, or there was zero awareness for me to be able to even know what I was voting for. So I just went there and just thought, what does my dad vote for? All right, yeah, I'll vote for that. Just kind of going along with the flow, so to speak.
Coming back to titles, if there was a title that to you, really exemplifies, as you put it, pomp and prejudice, or even prestige, what's one of those? What one of those?
It would have to be royalty, and not because I have anything against royal people in themselves, just by the fact that, just by the nature of being born into something, automatically gives you that silver spoon, so to speak. Like that is a situation that I can understand why it happened 200, 300, 400 years ago. But in this day and age, where we all talk about, open democracy, even though we don't have a pure democracy, because if you had a pure democracy, you'd be voting on every single subject that came up. But I will get onto this, because this will be my next question of how can you build towards that kind of utopia, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, just the whole idea of a royal bloodline that continues along for centuries, where people are fed that silver spoon just by the nature of being born into that privilege. That for me is the beginnings of a systematic issue that needs to be dissolved.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the issue of royalty and being born into such a position, and I guess we sit here not having been born into that position. I'm sure that being born into that family, it's not all lollipops and rainbows. I'm sure it comes with its own set of unique struggles and issues.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Oh yeah. But it's like, I don't say it because I'm jealous that I wasn't. I just don't. I don't think there's a place for it in this world anymore. Like I used to be very much a royalist. Like I used to love the royal. I used to even advocate for them at one point. But then I kind of started thinking more broadly and thinking, well, if you already have a system, or I found myself dead against a system of rule that creates haves and have-nots, but yet you're complicit already within a system that deals with it from the get-go. And I look, I got nothing against the royal family. Look, I know they do good stuff, but that's the least they can do because they're in such a privileged position.
Yeah. But I guess the thing is that, like, I mean, I'm quite pleased that I wasn't born to the royal family, because oh my goodness, can you imagine just trying to be that well behaved all the time? That probably in itself would be a version of a punishment. But in the same breath, I'm sure they didn't put their hands up and say, "Hey, pick me for being born to a royal family." They've just been born into it, and there they are.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's not their fault. I understand.
They them and us have been born into the society, into these structures that we've inherited from. I guess you mentioned it earlier, from our ancestral societies that were built up, in England in medieval times.
Well, we're a product of those who came before us. That's a simple way of putting it. You are what you are because of someone else. Like it, and look, to some degree, obviously, you still have choices to make in your life, but you're born into certain areas of society that you have no choice but to be part of that part of society.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I mean, therein lies a really good discussion point around, you're born to a royal family, you're born with that wealth, with that prestige, with that mana. You're born into a family in a lower socioeconomic area of London, where you live week to week, where there's not always enough food to go around. That's different ends of the spectrum. But there's no game of cards beforehand to see who gets who. There's no potluck. There's no all put your hands in and last one to.
But the only way of creating a society that's more equal and more equitable is to dissolve those structures. By dissolving those structures, you're starting to bring the lines together to meet in the middle, so to speak.
I guess you'd have to be consciously conscious if you did do that, because I think I mentioned it earlier. I think humans have a natural tendency to organize and to systemize and to create hierarchies and try and hold power over other people. I think to avoid that happening again, you'd have to be consciously cognizant of some of the mistakes of a past society. And there have been past societies on this earth, on this planet, that have existed before our version of society now.
Yeah. We only have to look at like the Maori culture before the Western European settlers came in. Like I didn't realize this, but like Maori never had jails, but yet the white man came over from Europe, and the first thing they did was set up jails and throw people in jail, like for misdemeanors and stuff like that. Like there's something about the white cultural understanding of, if you do something wrong, then you must go to jail. Whereas in Maori culture, before the Europeans came over, it was like, no, this is a tribal problem. So we all come to the table, and we all now, as a team, decide how we're going to stop that from happening again, and how we're going to integrate this person back into our tribe as a different person.
Yeah, I guess that idea there, like the responsibility is on not just the individual but the community to support a resolution. Whereas, as you've mentioned, you put someone in jail, and it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, which actually doesn't solve the problem. It can sometimes perpetuate new problems or the old problem again. So
yeah, well,
interesting.
no one comes out of a situation where they're thrown behind bars in a positive notion. Like, yes, there's people that change, but I mean, there's still going to be some sort of psychological scarring where you're treated like a, well, I would say treat like a dog, because we treat our dogs quite nice. But I mean, in the euphemism of like treating someone like an animal, like no one wants to be treated like an animal, even if they do wrong. Like if I did something wrong, I wouldn't expect someone with a title that was given to them by the government that gives them the right to come and arrest me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like
And then
here's
throw
something,
me
right?
away, throw me into a prison and not let me out. Like, it just
Well,
seems very it's very harsh. Like, and look, I understand, like, you do the crime, you do the time. I understand that. Like, this is I'm not talking about not being accountable for your actions and stuff like that. But someone somewhere who has a title has given themselves, or people have given themselves the power to be able to now dictate how they're going to deal with someone else without there being a general consensus around that situation. For me, that just seems a little bit ludicrous. It's like, but yet we accept it. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I've thought this before. I've thought about, as a human, you're never impartial. Whenever you make a decision, you always come to the table with the experiences you have had already in your life. You can never ever be totally objective to a situation because you've always got a judgment. So then I think, but we have humans as judges, humans as policemen, humans as politicians. How do they deal with having social bias, prejudice, experiences, and then try and uphold the law without that coming into play? I just don't think it's possible.
No, and that's why you've had so many situations in the past where people's biasness has overridden their clear judgment, and so you have innocent people being thrown in prison, innocent people sent to death, either by the gallows or lethal injection, electric chair, whatever it is. And then years later, they've realized, oh, yeah, no, we made a mistake because we didn't thoroughly investigate this crime in the first place. But yeah, these people have been given those titles as a judge of the people, and we just accept, oh, well, he's a judge, so he must know what he's doing. But yet there's not a general consensus over what the final outcome is, because it's just a small amount of people that are involved in that decision making.
Yeah, I guess that's why they use sometimes they use the trial by jury to maybe get a wider perspective on life rather than just one person, and maybe by doing that you get more chance of less bias and less or more objectivity. But you're totally right. There have been some hasty decisions in the past which have been wrong or been incorrect or been based on non-factual information. But I guess in the heat of the moment, people think, "Oh, that's fact. That's this."
It's like
great example: burning redheads at the stake because they're witches, or have wizardry or magic powers.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I was thinking of the Monty Python skit when they're trying to prove a woman's a witch. He's like, oh, if we throw her in the river with a stone and she sinks to the bottom, she's a witch. if we throw her in with the stone and she doesn't come back up, then she must not be a witch. And it's like, well, either way, she's going to the bottom and she's not coming up, and you're still going to kill her whether she's a witch or she's not a witch. It's that kind of like, we've already made our mind up, but we're going to kind of spin it in a way where it works for us.
Mate, Monty Python has so many life lessons. It's really easy in life to get caught up in a one track. You know, you think you know the outcome, you think you know what you got to do, and you don't see the wood for the trees. You know, I don't know if that's you, man, but it happens to me sometimes. Like I get carried off in what I think I know, and what you think you know is actually, you know, you're missing a couple pieces of the puzzle in what you think you know.
Mate, it's hello. It's confirmation biased. We've all got it.
Totally.
We've all got the confirmation bias. Right.
Totally.
I'm going to stop it there because we're running out of time. But at the same time, I've thought to myself, this is a great way to segue onto what we can talk about next week. And that is what type of society or a way that society works that would be good in your mind. So, you know, you have things like communism, socialism, democracy, authoritarianism, can't even say it, dictatorship, fascism. You know, there's 101 different ideologies out there, but you've got a week to think about. Now, obviously, not anyone is perfect, because otherwise we would be doing it now. But what type of ideology do you most associate with? I know what I do, and I'm not going to give it away because I want one person to come and listen to this podcast the week after. Me mum, she's going to listen.
It's very interesting. Interesting question. Just on that, the word Segway. Now, Segway, the little thing you ride with the handlebars, is spelt different to segue into a different topic. I didn't know that. I thought they were both spelt like Segway, the riding thing, but they're not. They are spelt differently. Segway, S-E-G-W-A-Y. Segue into a different topic, S-E-G, something with a U and an E. I've forgotten the actual spelling, but it's spelled differently. Who knew? Or did everyone know and I didn't know?
What a way to finish a podcast.
I know.
Ratings are going to fly after this one.
Pahoo.
Yes, you've been listening to Chatting Up the Chick, Bish Bash Bosh. Woohoo!